Recording in progress. Okay, welcome everybody. Tonight is a special weekly roundup. Why? Because we're coming up in this week to Yud Shvat, the 10th day of Shvat, which marks the yahrzeit. Please mute yourself if you don't know if you're muted. Which marks the yahrzeit, the anniversary of the passing of the previous Rebbe, and the rise to leadership of our Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, in 1951. I'm not going to get into too much about it. I wonder if Tuesday night is when it starts. So tomorrow night, tomorrow night. Who gives a class tomorrow night? I don't remember, but we'll get that person to maybe. Is it me? Somebody. We'll get that person to talk a little bit about what Yud Shvat means. But just obviously in a personal way, without the Rebbe, I wouldn't be here, and you guys wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here talking to me, learning, and probably wouldn't have met my wife, and I wouldn't have had a family, and all the good things. And one thing, now that's like a very personal thing, but one thing I want to mention, the Gemara says that in every generation there is ispastusha de Moshe. Not in the Gemara, in the Zohar. And the Zohar says in every generation there is a Moses of the generation. Mordechai was the Moses of his generation. The Rambam was the Mordechai of his generation. Doesn't say that in the Zohar about the Rambam. But Yeshua was the Moses of his generation. Every generation has a Moses, a leader of the generation, which tells the Jewish people what is the mission of this generation, how to deal with the challenges of this generation. So one thing that I appreciate from the Rebbe in a very materialistic sense, in a very concrete sense, is clarity. That the Rebbe has responsa, and the Rebbe got the second most mail in America, next to the president. The Rebbe read every letter. Didn't respond necessarily to every letter in writing, but read every letter. And the Rebbe has clarity on everything, and shared that with us. He once said that the Frierdiker Rebbe, his father-in-law, was the previous Rebbe, and he would say, our Rebbe would say before he was Rebbe, if my father-in-law shares something with me, no matter how secretive or what confidential it may be, he knows that at some point I'm going to tell everybody, because that is the idea of a king. A king gives to his people. I give everything. I give it all away. It's all for you. I don't take anything for myself. A true king gives to his people. So something that he always shared was, I always found that to be humorous. And the Rebbe would laugh sometimes. The Rebbe was about to share something secretive, so to speak, or unique. And he said, my father-in-law shared it with me. He didn't say for me to share with everybody, but he knows that I'm going to eventually tell everybody. So here's a lesson, or here's a secretive type of thing that's passed down from generation to generation that no other chassidim knew. But just clarity is what I think a lot of us hope for and wish for, and filling with a sense of mission. And so it's a time to learn the Rebbe's Torah, which we always do. I don't even know if you realize it, but every time we teach and we learn, I'm basically giving over a lot of the Rebbe's Torah, the Rebbe's teachings. So if you enjoy it, then you enjoy the Rebbe's teachings. So that is Tuesday night. There is a big, huge, tremendous gathering that will take place at the Rebbe's Ohel, the gravesite of the Rebbe. As we know, the grave of a tzaddik, we spoke about this many times, that there are 5 levels to the soul, and the lowest level, the nefesh, remains with the body forever until Mashiach comes. So you literally connect to the soul of the tzaddik when you go to their gravesite. That it applies to all Jews, by the way, but especially a tzaddik. You go there, and so we go there and we ask for blessings. You can write it in. You could send a fax. You can use your phone to send a letter, and it'll be taken to the Rebbe. Nobody will read it. They have people there that print it out. They rip it up, and they throw it into the Ohel of the Rebbe. Which we can speak about a little bit more tomorrow. What exactly is all that about? but it is a day to really reflect on who we'd like to be, what we'd like to be, what is our mission. That takes place tomorrow night and Wednesday. It's a very holy day, a very auspicious day. Let's not waste it. So that is going on in the Chabad world. You're learning from a Chabad rabbi, so I'm only going to plug in the Chabad stuff. Tanya this week, like we always do, but briefly, Tanya this week speaks about the Pintel Yid. Basically, there's a part of us, we have a job. The job is to love and fear God. That is not a very easy thing to do all the time. How do you develop a love and fear of God? So the Tanya explains by contemplating on the kindness of God, who God is, not just the kindness of God, but who God is, and how God is involved in every moment of your life, which only with Chassidus and Kabbalah can you really appreciate God. As we know, Judaism is a relationship, like Rabbi Burke gave a class on not too long ago. Judaism is a relationship. In order to have a good relationship with somebody, you have to get to know them. The more you get to know them, the more you'll appreciate them. Right now, we're planning a trip, I think, to New York, our shul for the men. And I remember I went on it 5 years ago, and I was going to be roommates with people that I didn't know, and I kind of had my own thoughts about them. I've seen them briefly here and there, but then I got stuck with them, and they turned out to be fantastic people, and we've become very close. So the more you get to know somebody, so I'm looking forward to meeting new people on this trip, hopefully. The more you get to know somebody, obviously, the more appreciation you have, the more you want to give. Love, the root of the word love is hav. Hav means to give. How do you know if you really love somebody? How do you become one with them, so to speak, is by giving. By giving it away, that's how you come close. Classic Hasidic, Kabbalistic saying. You give it away. Baron, what's his name? Baron Rothschild was extremely wealthy, a billionaire of his time in England, banking financier. He told his son at his bar mitzvah, you want to be rich? Give it all away. That's what he said. You give it all away. Give all your money away, and that's how you become rich. So it's a classic Judaism, Jewish way of thinking. You give it away. It's not about you. It's about the other person. So develop that love and fear of God is to getting to know God, but really you have to understand there's a part of you that's called the Ava Misoteris. There's a natural inborn love that you have for God, just like you have a natural love for your parents. You have a natural love for your child. There are certain people, certain relationships that you have a natural love because they're an extension. Either you're an extension of them, they're an extension of you. Really, it works more so a parent and a child. They're an extension of you, and so therefore you see yourself and you have a natural love. So the same thing, God and us, there's a natural love, and we try to cultivate that and develop that, and that comes out, it says the Tanya, at certain times when you're against the wall, and you're against the wall, and it's either choose, materialism or choose, a godless entity, avodah zarah, serving idols or serving God. We find that people who had no connection to their Judaism or serving God or anything like that, when that came out, when they were put against the wall in such a situation, they chose choosing God, much to the shock of everybody. Obviously, many stories of that in communist Russia and Holocaust and more contemporary issues. David Pearl, if you want to say, said, "I'm a Jew." The last words that it came out of his mouth, even though he never did really practice anything. Nevertheless, he said it. There's a natural love that you have inside of us that we try to cultivate. That's the Tanya of the week. How to cultivate that, how to reach that. That's what we get into. So, but the bulk of what we speak about on Monday nights is the Parsha. And this is a very special Parsha. This is the Parsha that we read about the splitting of the sea. The Jewish people have left Egypt. We ran out. Now, remember, the whole time Moses is telling God, we just need to go for 3 days. I'm sorry. God told Moses to tell Pharaoh, just say we're going for 3 days. We got to go do a little holiday and we'll come back. So, Pharaoh says, after the slaying of the firstborn, Pharaoh says, get out of here. And he realizes after 3 days that we're not coming back. So he chases after us. And the Jewish people, we thought, scot-free. That's not what happened. We go to the sea and we're camping. we have this Anania Kovid, we have this cloud that protects us. It keeps us shaded and launders our clothing. And it's very nice. And to commemorate that, we sit in a sukkah, right? We sit in a sukkah to remember the being surrounded by the blessings of Hashem, blessings of God. But they come running down. The Egyptians come, 600 of the finest soldiers of Pharaoh's army, led by Pharaoh himself, who was a firstborn and survived the slaying of the firstborn, and who will survive the splitting of the sea, the only Egyptian that will survive. And we'll talk about why God kept him alive and what happened to him afterwards. He comes down and the Jewish people freak out. And they're like, the slave mentality. Okay, fine. There were 10 miracles and all these different things. But nevertheless, they're like, oh my gosh, here he comes. What do we do? So solutions were proposed. There were 4 groups, 4 camps of solutions. One group said, forget it. I'm going back to Egypt. We should all go back to Egypt and just slave mentality. Let's all go back. Second group said, it's better to die than to go back as a slave. Let's kill ourselves. Third group said, let's fight them. By the way, that second group is kind of like Masada. It's a bit of a controversial, what happened at Masada is a bit controversial, by the way, if you're familiar with that story. According to Jewish law, not so clear, not so simple. The third group said, let's fight them. And the fourth group said, let's pray. And I think Moses was in that camp of let's pray to God. We've always had the Jewish people have always had the ability to pray. And that's our weapon. Our greatest weapon is prayer, is the mouth, the ability to articulate. And God always has his ear to what we have to say. And Moses says, okay, let me ask God. And God says, you're all wrong. Jump in. Just keep going. I told you to go into the desert. Vayiso. Just keep moving on. And everyone's like, what do you mean keep moving on? There's a sea over here. The tribe of Benjamin says, you know what? We'll do it. And the tribe of Benjamin starts to go in. Who's the tribe of Benjamin? Whatever. They had real strong faith in Hashem. And they start to go in, and the tribe of Yehuda then starts throwing rocks at them. And they say, no, you can't go in because we're Yehuda, the tribe of Judah, and we're the leaders of the Jewish people. Even though Moses was from the tribe of Levi, but the kingship belongs to the tribe of Yehuda. King David comes from the tribe of Yehuda. King Solomon comes from the tribe of Yehuda. Mashiach will come from the tribe of Yehuda, not from Moses, not a Levite, or Aaron, a Kohen. And they say, we go in. If anyone's going in, we're going in. And Nachshon ben Aminadav, the brother-in-law of Aaron from the tribe of Yehuda, jumps in. And he didn't know how to swim. In fact, I don't think anybody knew how to swim. They jumped in, and he starts walking in the sea. And it's going up his knees. And it's going up his shoulders. And it's going up to his chin. And it's about to go up to his nose. And the sea splits into 12 parts. 12 parts, Rashi says. 12 parts, one for each tribe. And the sea splits. And not only does that sea split, but all the water in the world splits. And we'll talk about why. Why does all the water in the world split? And it has to do with, I'll just briefly give you a little bit of a foreshadowing. Because God always makes it, whenever he does a miracle, he always leaves a little bit of doubt. He wants to make sure there's a little bit that, maybe this was a natural phenomenon. It was a phenomenon, but it was natural. God didn't actually do it. And we'll get to that why. So let's just go back a little bit. So they leave Egypt. And where are they going to? They're trying to travel to a place called Sukkos. They're leaving Ramses, the city of Ramses. I guess that was the capital at the time. And they're going to Sukkos. And it says when they left with matzahs. The people picked up their dough and they, before it was able to leaven, which is matzah. But you think that, they ate matzah Why do we eat matzah? Because they didn't have enough time for the dough to leaven. Now, the verse later on, it says, you have to listen a little bit, they ate their matzah in Sukkos, which was like, I don't know, a 2-day travel, like a day travel. It only takes 18 minutes for dough to rise in order for it not to be matzah. I can tell you the trip took more than 18 minutes. So why did they eat matzah when they finally arrived at their destination 24 hours later? And the answer is because there was such a revelation, according to Kabbalah, there was such a revelation of godliness that everything remained humble. Even the dough didn't rise. And that is part of the mitzvah of eating matzah on Passover. It's it's called the bread of humility. The idea is the idea, if you want to be a vessel to really be set free, to receive godliness, you have to be an empty vessel. In other words, a vessel that can receive. And that only comes with humility. Humility, according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, is not being like a shmata, like a loser. That's not humility. That's called false humility. And that's one of the worst things you could possibly do in Judaism, is to say, oh, I'm a nobody, I'm a nothing. No, humility means you recognize your talents and your strengths, and you know where your talents and strengths are, and you know where your weaknesses are. And you understand that I'm nothing more than a product of my environment, by godliness, by God being involved in my world, by my parents, by I just happen to be in the right place at the right time, whatever. Everything, you're not a self-made person. Everything was given to you. And with that recognition and understanding that I have a talent that I developed, and I had a talent that there's areas that I'm not good at. Nevertheless, it all comes from God. It all comes from my family, my environment, and ultimately from God. That keeps you humble. And that's the main mitzvah with regards to what we're supposed to think about while we have matzah. We spoke about earlier, Shema. A lot of mitzvahs you don't need special intention to do. You don't have to think anything else. You can just do the mitzvah. Yeah, putting on tefillin, you can just put on tefillin for the most part. Whatever mitzvah you want to do. Mikvah, yeah, you got to go to the mikvah. You just dump in the mikvah. You don't have to have any special intention. There are certain mitzvahs you have to have the right intention for. Shema is one of them. And also matzah, there's a strong opinion that you should have this intention in mind when you're eating matzah. You don't have to. If you didn't have it while having Passover, don't worry about it. You still fulfilled the mitzvah. It says in the Torah that we left b'chamishim. When we left Egypt, we left b'chamishim. It's the word chamishim. What does chamishim mean? It has two meanings. One is we left with, chamishim means like armor, weapons. And the other one means, chamishim literally means a fifth. Says the Torah, only 1/5 of the Jewish people left Egypt, 20%. Now, it's not really clear whether it was actually 20%, because that would have mean there were about 15 million or 12 million Jews living in Egypt, it doesn't make any sense. There can't be that many. But nevertheless, the majority of the Jewish people did not leave Egypt. As we explained last week, we were institutionalized. We believed, I'm a slave. I can't be anything more than a slave. I can't make it in the desert. Despite all of these miracles, maybe I'm not even really so convinced they're miracles. We remained institutionalized and we never left. The Arizal says what's unique about the final redemption, when Mashiach comes, not only will every Jew be taken out of Egypt, out of the Gullus, the exile, but we will all want to go, and we will all be deserving, no matter which Jew, however he's or she's holding, wherever is going on in their lives. That Arizal says that every Jew will be taken out. That's what will be unique about the future exile. The Abarbanel explains, just going through, the Abarbanel explains that the Egyptians, they had a change of heart, just looking through it right now. And what happened? God took away Pharaoh's freedom of choice, which we spoke about many times. There's a few times in the Torah where God removes free choice, and this was one of them. God removed Pharaoh's ability for free choice and the Egyptians' ability for free choice. In other words, they probably wouldn't have gone. But why? So that there will be a splitting of the sea. Why a splitting of the sea? Why did this miracle have to happen? We know God does not make miracles for no reason. There has to be some sort of reason, and the reason is as I once heard the rabbi say, to scare the living daylights out of the Canaanites. Who are the Canaanites? The Canaanites were those that living in the land of Canaan, living in the land of Israel. It wasn't called the land of Israel at the time, it was called the land of Canaan. The idea was there was supposed to be a splitting of the sea, everyone would be killed, and Pharaoh would make it out alive to bear testimony that this really happened and what God does for this people. And it literally, it says, the psukim, the passages, it says about the fear of the Canaanites, the 5 nations, or the 7 nations, the 5 nations that were living in Israel at the time, they melted with fear. They were petrified, that they knew that there was nothing we could do to stop these people who are coming. That was one of the miracles. And it says while the Jewish people came out of Egypt, it says biyad rama. He had a hand up high. That's what it says in the Torah. Biyad rama. Our hand was up high. And the Ashkenazi Jews always, it's like a little bit of a saying. We follow somebody called the Ramah. Who was the Ramah? The Ramah was a, 16th century. When was the Ramah? 16th century, I believe. A 16th century posek, as we would call. He was he codified the Jewish law for the Ashkenazi Jews. What happened? Until the Rambam came, Maimonides came in the 13th century or 11th century. 11th century. It's just anybody who knows. I'm just forgetting. I think in the world, 10th century, 10th or 11th century. He codified Jewish law. Up until then, everybody followed their own academy, right? They followed their own teacher, and that's what the whole Mishnah is all about. The Gemara, the Talmud, it's these different opinions about what's the law, or interpreting from the Torah, what's the proper law, and everybody followed their own teacher, their own academy, their own yeshiva. Now, at some point after the Second Temple period, especially, the yeshivas were disbanded for the most. A lot of them were disbanded. Everybody was basically disbanded. Everybody was dispersed everywhere. We went to Spain, we went to France, eventually we made it to Poland and Russia, Italy. We were all over the place. And there wasn't really any centralized. We were busy trying to make a living, and there was wars, and so people didn't really remember the laws. And you kind of piece together whatever you could piece together. Came the Rambam, who lived in Morocco and Spain, and eventually Egypt, but he codified the entire Torah, codified it into law. Now, the thing is, it was all his opinion. Although we believe he did it with divine inspiration, everyone agrees with that. Nevertheless, it was really for Sephardic Jewry. It didn't really help the Jews that lived in Krakow or, Eastern Europe. And who knows if it took a while for them to even get to it. So what happened was, 3 centuries later, you had somebody called the Yosef Cairo, who lived in Tzfas. You can go to the Cairo shul. If you go to Tzfas, you can go to his synagogue and where he lived and everything like that. So he started to codify another law because times had changed. There was industrial revolution, certain industries changed, different fashions, different groups of people. The law is always evolving because there's always new innovations introduced. There's always new things going on in the world. So law, even till today, there's new laws that come out. There's new laws that come out. So Yosef Karo then had to he started codifying a new law. And the way he did it was he took the Rambam and he took the Rif, Yitzchak Alfasi, and the Rosh, who also lived in the 13th century. All these people codified a law. They all have, like, one way or another, they were codifying laws. And Yosef Karo sort of made he made it more updated, a more complete updated version of law for all Jews. Now there was somebody else doing the same thing in Krakow, Reb Moshe Isserlis, also known as the Ramah. I've been to his shul. It's called the Ramah shul. It's still intact. It's still beautiful. It's all there because the Nazis kept Krakow. They didn't touch Krakow. You want to see what Jewish life was many years ago, go to Krakow. It's a beautiful place. And Hitler, Yamach Shemo, he wanted to create like a walkthrough museum of the Jewish people. After he, in his mind, he would get rid of all the Jewish people, and he wanted to make a museum. And you could walk through the city of Krakow, and you can go see what a shul used to be like and how Jews used to act. So everything is intact and beautiful, and the Ramah is still there. The Ramah shul, that's where he was in Krakow. So he was writing one also, just like Yosef Karo, at the exact same time in the 16th century. And Yosef Karo, so to speak, beat him to the punch and printed it. And it made itself to Krakow. I think mail was a little bit better by then. It made itself to Krakow, and instead of the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserlis. Okay, so I'm sorry. What's the difference? Yosef Karo wrote it for Sephardic Jewry. He lived in Israel. The Ramah wrote it for Eastern Europeans, for Ashkenazim. So what the Ramah did was it was glasses. The Yosef Karo calls it the Shulchan Aruch, the set table. That's what we call, the Shulchan Aruch. And then the Mappa, the tablecloth, is the Ramah. And what he did, the Ramah said, any place that we differ from Rabbi Yosef Karo, Sephardic Jewry, I put in parentheses. And so if you want to know what a rabbi studies to become a rabbi, he studies Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, the Ramah, what is for the Ashkenazi Jews, and the Shach and the Taz, who are two people that comment and expound and explain more clearly where those opinions, what their opinions are, and their sources, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's called the Ramah. So it says that the Jewish people came out biyad Ramah. Ashkenazi say, see, biyad Ramah. The Ramah is the right one to follow. It's kind of a dark joke, but that's who we follow. So if you're Ashkenazi Jew, you follow the Ramah, Moshe Isserlis. By the way, we do have this concept. It's an accepted concept that all works of Torah that are accepted by the Jewish people, meaning everybody studies it and everybody holds it to be of great stature, until the 16th century was written with divine inspiration. You believe that? With Ruach HaKodesh, with prophecy. What is prophecy, by the way? Prophecy, in a very short way, means they work within the world of the subconscious. That, so to speak, God, just like we, as I explained many times, we are in the image of God, made in the image of God, B'Tselem Elokim Nasa Adam, and just like we have the conscious and the subconscious, and the super subconscious, and then the id, or as Yossi Jacobson would say, or Simon Jacobson, the yid, the part that's pure godliness. Same thing with God. God has the conscious part, so to speak, and then the subconscious. And the subconscious world, if you're in constant contact with the subconscious world, that's with divine inspiration. That's where divine inspiration comes through and flows through. And they believe that they wrote everything from that place, from the subconscious world. Maybe one day we'll have a class on prophecy and perhaps how to tap into it. Although we did do a halacha class. We did how to have prophecy. The Rambam writes it down. It's not so easy. Joy is the number one foundation, right? That's if you remember that. All right, so moving along into the parsha, chapter 15, verse 12. So we're standing by the Red Sea, Sea of Reeds, and they start complaining. It's the first of the 10 complaints. By the way, it's all we had. It seems like we complained for 40 years. We didn't complain for the entire 40 years. We complained 10 times. Not so bad. If you only have 10 arguments with your wife in 40 years or your spouse in 40 years, it's not so bad. So this is the first of our complaints. And we say to Moses, who's we? It might have only been a few, not that many people, by the way. By the sin of the golden calf, you know how many Jews were involved in the sin of the golden calf? Out of 600,000 men, out of 3 million people, there were 3 million people. 3,000. 3,000, that's less than 1%, were involved in the sin of the golden calf. A lot of whom were also made up of non-Jews, what's called the Erev Rav, those that came out, they wanted to be on the winning team. We had a lot of people that wanted to be on the winning team, so they came out of Egypt with us. They weren't Jewish. And they brought a lot of black magic with them. The Egyptians were really good at black magic. And they made the golden calf. So when we say who was complaining against Moses, this number one complaint, it might not have been so many people. But what did we say? Moses, what did you bring us out here to die? There wasn't enough space in Egypt. This is the line. There wasn't enough space. There wasn't enough land, the land of Egypt, for us to be buried. You had to take us over here in this cramped little space to kill us. We would rather have died in the land of Egypt. The Jewish people actually said something else. They said even more than this, which Moses repeats in Devarim, in the 5th book. And what we really said was, further expounded upon, was we'd rather have died. 1 month later, I apologize. 1 month later, we're going to have another complaint, our second complaint. And that was when we didn't really have much food. Basically, all of the matzah ran out. It was like a month worth. Matzah lasted like a month or something. And we complained and we said, we'd rather have, you brought us out here to starve. We'd rather have been in Egypt and died by the pots of meat. And Moses said, that was when Moses rebuked the Jewish people at 37 days before he passed away. This was the opening rebuke. You said to me, Jewish people, we'd rather have died by the pots of meat. And he said that was the worst thing you possibly could have said. What were we saying? That we were basically saying we'd rather have lived a life of material pursuits, materialism, pots of meat. We'd rather have had meat than seek a spiritual life, living a life of godliness and holiness. And for a Jew, that's just a no-no. We don't go live in the Himalayan mountains. That's not a Jewish concept. We don't try to get away and live in a Buddhist. We don't live in like a little place somewhere far away. We're involved in the world, but we see as our souls are the ikar, as we say. The soul living from a place of soul is more important, is what takes precedence than living a material, physical life. And living, do we live to eat or do we eat to live? Yeah, that's a classic Hasidic thing. I don't know if it's like a Hasidic thing. They quote it in yeshiva a lot. Do you live to eat or do you eat to live? And what we did at this time, the first complaint was we live to eat, and we're not gonna be able to sit by our cholent pot. I'd rather die if I'm not gonna have cholent, spaghetti and meatballs. And Moses said that was had a lot of work to do, essentially, which we did. We did take care of that with time. Just moving along over here. So the water split. There we go. And God kept them alive. And why did God keep them alive? Like we said, all the waters in the world, the word for mayim that says that the water split, it doesn't say that the water split, it says the waters split. And from here, the tradition tells us that all the waters in the world split. Yeah, you have a glass of water in front of you, it would have split. And the people couldn't understand why. And Pharaoh came out, and why did they do it? So that when Pharaoh came out and he said, I saw a splitting of the sea, he wouldn't look like a lunatic. And he would say, I know why all the waters in the world split. It's because of God. On the flip side, and so therefore he was able to, everybody in the world was asking, why did all the waters split? And Pharaoh wasn't just a nobody. Pharaoh was the leader. He was he was like the leader of the entire world, civilized world. So the word got passed pretty quickly. On the other hand, it told the Jewish people that it left a little bit of doubt in the Jewish people's minds, whether God was he really involved in this? Because why would God split the waters everywhere in the world? If it wasn't just for, in other words, if God did it just for us, it would just be for us. Why did God go split the world in water in, Mexico or in South Africa? Like, what's the connection? In the Himalayan mountains. So it always left like a little bit of a However, the Jewish people at the time did believe that this is totally God's working magic. In fact, we say the line, if you saw my quiz today, Zeh Keli Vanvehu. The revelation, the godly revelation took place at the splitting of the sea was so great, it was greater than the 10 plagues, that specifically by the splitting of the sea did the Jewish people point and say, Ze Keli, this is my God. Oh, it was an open miracle. It said that everyone was prophesying at the time. And it says the level of prophecy by a simple maidservant was greater than the prophecy of Elijah and Isaiah. They reached higher levels of prophecy. All channels were just open up. All the, whatever needed to be opened up was opened up at that time. And there were a lot of miracles, by the way, during that period. Trees were growing at the bottom of God just made miracle upon miracles, which we expound upon in the Haggadah. There's like a certain part that probably a lot of us just read very quickly and we don't really understand what's going on. But what they're saying is there were many miracles. There wasn't just 10 plagues. There were thousands of plagues, and there were thousands of miracles going on at the same time. One of them is that these trees, I don't know, like apple trees were growing at the bottom of the ocean, and we were able to just pick and eat beautiful tasting fruit. And this was the second phase, according to Kabbalah. This was the second phase of getting ready for the ultimate revelation of godliness. Phase 1 was the 10 plagues. Phase 2 was splitting of the sea, and phase 3 was the receiving of the Torah. There were 3 times God really openly revealed himself, and they were as a preparation for us to be humble and ready receptacles to receive God's Torah in order to carry out the mission that we needed to do. This was phase 2. In this Shabbos, by the way, we have a custom to eat kasha. I don't know what's kasha in English. Kasha is what? I think buckwheat. Buckwheat. Yeah, we have a custom to eat buckwheat, kasha. But in what we call it kasha. Why? The idea is kasha in Hebrew means a question. We have a lot of questions in life. I know I spoke about the Rebbe gave clarity, but there's things that we just don't explain. Even the Rebbe said this is unexplainable, tragedies, or just whatever it is. Why does something happen to this person in this way? And they're questions. And it's okay to have questions. Judaism very much accepts questions, and you can have your own questions on God, whatever it is, and you have questions for God. We all have questions for God when he comes, yeah. But when the Jewish people left, I want to back up a little bit. What did we eat after matzah? What did we get? Got something called the manna. Manna looked like buckwheat. It was like a translucent, weird buckwheat. And it tasted like whatever you wanted to taste like, but it only lasted for that day. You couldn't keep it and hand it for the next day. And it was called a test. It's a bread of test. Why? What? It should have been like a miracle. God said, I gave you this test called manna. I would have said, you gave me this miracle called manna. Why man? What happened was this: every morning dew would settle upon the grass, and this manna would appear. And we would take it and we would eat it. It would taste like whatever we wanted, except for a few items. And that was it. We had to wait till the next day. It was a perfect amount. Nobody got too much or too less. You never had to go to the bathroom. It was like the perfect amount for you. Very bizarre. And it took the people a long time to really get used to it. They were freaking out. I haven't been to the bathroom in a month. Doesn't seem so, but they felt good. They felt healthy. It was fine. And it was called God said, I gave this to you as a test. What's the test? The thing about the mun was that it only came, you never knew if it was coming tomorrow. It would come, there was no other food in the desert. They had to wait for it to come down. They would eat it and then it would spoil. If anything was left over, it would spoil. And God said, it's a natural trait to worry. We naturally want to worry, but it's not Jewish. The job is to push your worries away and rely on faith. That sometimes, very often, you got to rely on faith. It's called the bread of faith. And sometimes we have questions in life, and they can get us worried. But once in a while, you got to eat the question. You got to swallow those questions. Don't let those questions paralyze you. The problem with worry is that it gives you a lot of energy and you make no progress. And that is not a Torah approach. The Torah says that is not for the Jewish people. You must always be progressing. Why frogs was one of the plagues. What's unique about a frog? Frog only jumps forward. It cannot jump back. The Torah gives us one of the frogs to say that you always got to go forward. The going into the sea, this idea of progression, going into the ocean, going into the sea. Yeah, there's a whole army chasing behind you, and it's terrifying and it's worrisome. You keep moving forward. You just keep going. I know there's a sea in front of you. Keep moving forward. I'm in charge. I'll split it for you. Just trust me. Have faith in me. Keep moving forward. And that this Shabbos, because we get introduced to the manna, to the man, we have kasha, and we eat kasha. Kasha again means question, worrisome. We eat that. We eat it. Sometimes, you know what? Let me just eat it and move forward, because that's what I'm supposed to do. So we eat kasha, throw it in the cholent pot. That's why the test. Why is it called a test? Because I wanted to test your faith in me. It's really a test for yourself. How much faith do you really have in me? And that's a lesson for life, that really anything can be taken away from you at any moment. I mean, that's the truth. And everything is given to you by God. And you might think I have a safe job. Yeah, take the safe job. You can lose that job in a moment. You know, whatever it is, you think you're playing it safe. It's not necessarily any less safe than any other approach. But we'll save that for Brengen. Also, I just want to say something else unique about the mun. If you ever go to a Shabbos table, sometimes you'll see people have on the table garlic and eggs, and I think onions. It's kind of interesting. Like, why there's usually like a little bit of garlic, eggs, onions. Be like weird, because the mun, as we call it, tasted like anything but garlic. Like a few things. Garlic, eggs, onions was one of them. Why? Because it says at the time a woman was pregnant, the taste wasn't, I guess they're very sharp. I don't know why eggs, but it was sharp and it was unhealthy for the baby. It could be unhealthy for the baby. So God made it, it wouldn't taste like that. But we do it now. We put it on the table to commemorate that at the time, the challah, whatever. It's like a whole thing to commemorate what life was like living in the desert. So on a Shabbos table, people will sometimes do that. I don't do that. My wife makes like garlic stuff. It's very good, but I don't think we do it. I think it's just because we love garlic. It's not. So if you ever see people with garlic, eggs, and onions, and I think a couple other things, you'll know why. Let me just see. So moving on. When did this happen? By the way, this happened on the 7th night of Passover. 7 days after we left Egypt. That's when the splitting of the sea happened. We have a tradition to stay up the entire night, learn Torah, and go to the mikvah. Men go to the mikvah at daybreak, which is when the sea split. The sea split at daybreak. I don't know, say 4:50 in the morning. So we go to the mikvah at that time, and then we go to bed after that. Let's just make what actually happened. The sea split. The Egyptians came in. God closed it on them, and it was very descriptive. And we have the song that we sing called the Az Yashir. And the Torah is written in a very interesting way. Anytime there's a song in the Torah, it's written in a very interesting way. Aristeo actually has something very interesting that he posted on his Instagram. You can check it out. Kind of like a trippy thing to view the way the Torah writes it. It's very interesting. I don't know. You can ask him for it. What did we do? We actually just made a circle. We made a circle. We didn't travel forward. We actually, God had the tunnels, these 12 tunnels, and all we did was make a circle. We came right back to where we were. Why? To show the Jewish people that the Egyptians were dead. And there was a lot of their chariots were made out of gold and silver and all these precious jewels. And God promised Abraham that we would come out wealthy. So just to make sure that everybody took something, again, God was always pleading to us to please take their gold and silver. And we were very shy to do it when we left Egypt. Just to make sure that we do it, we took the gold and silver chariots. I'm sure Can we move the bodies out of the way? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what that would look like. Pharaoh made it out alive. I don't think people saw him, but he went somewhere. And then we carried on. That was it. We carried on. And what happens? And what happens at the end? What happens at the end is we're eventually going to get into a fight with Amalek. No, that's a little bit after. It's not in this week's parsha. Anyway, we're on our way. Where are we on our way to? We're getting ready because in 42 days from now, 42 days later, we are going to receive the Torah. It takes 49 days to get from when we left Egypt until we get the Torah, because as we explained, there are 49 gates of impurity. Actually, there are 50 gates of impurity. There's 49. There's 49 gates of impurity. What does that mean? The animal soul is made up of 7 emotive traits, and each one of the 7 emotive traits include the other 7 emotive traits, which equals 49 animalistic traits. And we're spending the next 49 days, which is called Sphira, right? There's 49 days from Passover until Shavuos. We're refining ourselves and preparing ourselves for the receiving of the Torah, which will take place. So we have 42 days later. We're going to be getting ready for the Torah. It's big excitement. We're getting psyched up, and there's a little bit of an experience of that now. When we read the Torah, there's some of that energy, even though it's not the time period, but nevertheless, when you read it from the Torah, when it comes to that week's parsha, there is an effect, there is a spiritual energy. That spiritual energy does revisit the earth, our creation, on some level. So there's what to take advantage of. So if you want to find an opportune time to work on yourself or make a resolution to better yourself in one area, maybe break a certain habit, now is a proper time to start. I think I'll stop there. Anybody have any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So the first one is about the circle thing. So did they not end up on the other side of the Sea of Reeds?
Not right away.
Interesting.
Yeah, they will, but not right away. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And second question. So you said that we know the seas split, like plural, but in Hebrew,
not just the seas, any water in the world, any water.
In Hebrew, though, isn't the plural water the same as singular water? Is it just mayim?
Yeah, I have to. I canceled out of my my chumash that I was looking at, and I would open it up, but I'll tell you afterwards. But yes, but in the context of it, I don't remember it off the top of my head. It's in the plural. The way the sentence is structured, it would be in the plural. I have to let me look it up. Whatever. I'm not gonna look it up right now because I have to pull it back up, but I'll look it up. I'll give you the answer. Just trust me, though. Trust me. Yeah. Anybody?
Yeah,
Rabbi.
No. I was wondering if Pharaoh's heart was hardened or strengthened.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Hardened or strengthened?
Because so it says hardened, kush, like hardened, like stone, like it hardened.
But doesn't it mean that he was strengthened? Because they took away his freedom of choice, and they wanted him to be like egocentric and full haughty.
Yes. I have to look it up. I'm going to pull it back. I will pull up I'll answer your question at the end.
The other one is if the 2 loaves of bread on the Shabbos table.
Yes, there we go.
That represent the portion of manna that was given on Friday.
Yes. Thank you very much. I was searching for that. Yes, that's exactly why. Yes, it does represent the 2 loaves of manna that we would get on Erev Shabbos, for Shabbos, and that's why they add the other ingredients that weren't part of the manna taste there. Again, to sort of complete this whole manna B'midbar desert experience on Shabbos. Yes, thank you very much. That's correct. That's exactly what we do. In fact, all meals, every meal that you have on Shabbos has to have 2 loaves with it. You should try to eat 3. You should try to eat two meals. One in the nighttime, one in the daytime. And then the afternoon, Shabbos afternoon, depending if you follow Kabbalah or if you follow Halacha. I mean, Halacha, Kabbalah doesn't contradict Halacha, but you should try to have a 3rd meal, so to speak. You should wash. The rabbi in our community washes by that Shabbos afternoon. So like an hour before Shabbos comes out, he washes again with 2 loaves. Not everybody does that, but we try to eat something. Try to eat a little bit like fruit or something like that. By the way, Yud Shvat is coming when the rabbi would give brachas, right? So you have shluchim that will go over the world. I'm sure all of us are familiar with some of them. The blessing that the Rabbi Silberberg got, everybody basically got bracha v'atzlacha. You should have a lot of blessing and success. That was pretty much it. What our Rabbi Silberberg got, you should have bracha and atzlacha, and you will have more success than you can imagine. That's a unique. I don't know anybody else who got that one. It's a very, and he'll tell you that he has more success. He has success beyond his imagination, but I feel like there's more to come. Any other questions? The 2 loaves of challah. Okay, I will answer Aristeos and everybody else's question. Anybody else have any questions? Time is it? Yeah, okay, 8:54. That's good. Okay, tomorrow. What do we do tomorrow? I don't know. Tomorrow's class at noon, followed by class at 7 or 8 p.m., 7:30, I believe. Turkey Elvis. All right, everybody. Have a good night. You have any questions? Obviously, text me. And
Thanks, Rabbi.
yeah. Okay. See you guys.
Thank you.
Sure.